She had to choose whether or not she was buying nappies or sanitary protection. Wow. I genuinely think if it wasn't for us doing that, there would be no dinner.
We're facing the worst cost of living crisis in recorded history.
I'm afraid it's going to be deaths.
Around 2.1 million people used a food bank in the last year. Food prices have increased at their fastest rate in 45 years, and big government has made little headway in tackling the spiral. With the cost of living crisis now into its second year, a group of community hubs here in Newcastle have been forced to expand their operation.
What kind of challenges do you face as an MP up near Newcastle in Jarrow? What sort of constituents do you deal with?
Well, pretty wide-ranging, really. People up here are really struggling. There's a lot of people that are working, that are accessing food banks. Some of them have got 2 jobs, struggling to pay their rent, struggling to buy food. You know, people that are working, that are accessing the food banks. People that know what it's like to struggle and often still are struggling. They're the ones that are turning around with a strong sense of community and helping each other.
This is our little treasure trove. We are a food bank, a clothing bank, as well as a baby bank. It is a little bit of a mess inside, but you're all welcome to come in and have a little mooch. The clothing bank is running a referral, so we get loads and loads of support workers coming through every week, and they'll just come and take what they want for their clients. Sad that it's needed in the first place, but we are where we are in the country, and there's nothing you can do about that. This is the food bank. This is what we started off doing. We can see, oh God, anywhere from 10 to maybe 25 to 30 food parcels go out. That could be on a really busy day. This is where the little charity shop comes in, because what we make off there can fill the shelves in here, so it's kind of just circulating round. A lot of the families that would have donated to us in the past, a lot of them were actually coming through the door asking for help, but it was got quite scary, thinking we weren't going to be able to keep up with the demand for quite a while. The ones that are working are stopping the stereotype of a typical food bank user now, because it's not just, you're not just on a benefit. Some people are coming out and they're working, they're busting a gut all day long, and they're not any better off, and they're still finding themselves coming through the door. We run a sanitary scheme now. Well, we've run it for about 8 years. I think it was pretty much straight away, and we have probably, I would say maybe it's about in between 5 and 10 people coming a week to use that service. We had a lady who had a baby, but she also had a child of period age. She had to choose whether or not she was buying nappies or sanitary protection. Wow. You're going to choose nappies because the baby's going to leave a mess all over. Therefore, the daughter had to stay off school, and that's education hours lost. I think a lot of the things that you see and you say, people find it a little bit sort of think I'm being a little bit dramatic. This is what's happening. This is like 2023 we're living in, and that's the kind of thing that goes on. This is where we've been cooking bits of food. There was 25 meals made and they all went today. Wow. So this is, we've got a little homeless section, because every now and again I do a little walkabout in Newcastle city centre, giving blankets out, giving food bags, giving toiletry bags, sanitary bags. You know, all the policies where they say vulnerable people, especially females, should not be allowed on the streets. That is a load of shit. To think that there's females on the streets and they're having to find a little place to stay, it's got to be terrifying. There's hostels and there's shelters, but you've got drug and alcohol addictions, you've got people in there who don't like each other. So just because you're homeless, there's no code on to say that I've got to like you because you're a fellow homeless person. They're fighting amongst themselves, so it's not a safe place to be. A lot of the time you are safer finding yourself a dark spot in a little cubby hole. So glad the winter's nearly over, because I really, really thought we would lose people in their own homes. I know we lose street friends on the streets, they freeze to death. That's kind of the nature of the beast when you are on the streets, but I genuinely thought we were going to be losing people in their own homes. We have one of our volunteers who's a nurse in the A&E, and I think it was about 3 weeks ago, 2 elderly folk were in there with hypothermia. There's cases of malnutrition in the hospital, in children and in adults. Like, where are we living? This is the sort of thing that you expect to happen in a foreign country that you see on the news, not on your doorstep.
The government aren't doing enough?
No, nowhere near enough. You know, if you're working, or even if you're not, you know, and you're already claiming everything you can and you're still not paying the bills, then I don't know how the government can think that that they're doing enough. They're clearly not. You know, we've got energy companies making billions of pounds whilst people can't afford to put food on the table or heat their homes.
In absence of big government, outreach is mostly undertaken by communities. Local MP Kate Osborne hosts a drop-in cost of living roadshow every Saturday to reach out to local residents and ensure that they know how and where to access support as they battle a tough winter. It's a place to link constituents with services like warm banks, food banks, mental health services and debt advice.
I got a letter last week from the DWP to say that, you know, they were checking up on everything that I got. Because there is money in the bank, they're going to say, well, you don't need the pension credit. I cannot do my housework, so I have to pay somebody to come and do that. But I don't know whether they take those sort of things into consideration, you know. Obviously, you can't save anything. And honestly, Liz Truss decided to give the rich more money. I could have put something through the television.
I know what it's like to grow up somewhere that isn't feeling the benefits of growth. We need more investment and great jobs in every town and city across our country.
The government's plans for tax cuts could accelerate inflation and increase inequality.
You announced £45 billion of tax cuts without setting a fiscal framework. The pound tanked. This is surely the worst start of any Prime Minister.
I'm afraid that there's going to be deaths that are going back to the 30s.
There's a big movement now with people being fed up with their working conditions, a lot more people wanting to go on strike. Do you see a lot of people in your constituency wanting to take more direct action on their employers?
Yeah, I think people are realising that, you know, there's power in a union and actually they've got nowhere else to go and people don't want to go on strike. People can't afford to go on strike. But if you're already struggling to pay your bills and inflation is as high as it is, then they've got nowhere else to go.
And this is what these struggles are about. What kind of a society do we want going forward? The values of equality, the values of solidarity, of unity and social justice. That's what we're fighting for in these disputes. We're fighting for our future. This is the fight of our generation that we've got in front of us. They want to push us down. We've seen it in the UCU, we've seen it in all these strikes, to casualise working. And my question to any politician seeking a working class vote is, what did you do in this period? We cannot think that the professional politician, the policy boards, the people like Mandelson, the cynics, are going to control our future and deliver some kind of reform system for us in the future. We have to build it. We cannot be divided on the basis of colour, class, religion, background, whatever, region. We have to stand together. We have to build our movement, claim it back for working people.
We've seen firefighters balloting, we've seen teachers on strike, nurses for the first time ever. We're facing the worst cost of living crisis in recorded history, and at the same time we're seeing the stock market the highest it's ever been. How can we afford to pay people pay rises? Well, let's have a look at that 20 odd billion that BP made, 32 billion that Shell made, the 400 million that Royal Mail paid to its shareholders while threatening compulsory redundancies. There's a lot of people struggling just day to day. If you're struggling to put food on the table, to pay your bills, you know, that is where your focus goes, and it's bad for people's health, it's bad for the future, it's bad for the kids being raised in these environments. This is about working people not getting the money they need to get through life.
The North East is very strong in terms of its history around the trade unions, with the history of the shipyards and the mining industries. People see some hope in the trade unions being as strong as they are at the moment. There's not many people that work in the North East that aren't a member of a trade union. Maybe the younger generations don't understand the importance of it, but I think overall the unions are strong here.
We went to visit a men's mental health bank yesterday. What do you think the effect of the cost of living crisis has been on people's mental health? Perhaps it's cyclical. You get into a position where you can't afford things and then your mental health falls off a cliff maybe.
Yeah, and I think, as I said, people think that things are going to get better, but nothing's really changing. In fact, it's getting worse. You know, energy prices are rising, unemployment here is high. People feel isolated.
There's lots of men with all sorts of things going on, especially after pandemic with mental health issues. And it's just a place to come and be and start maybe a process that gets you back on the road to recovery if you've got a mental health problem. Mental health in South Tyneside is on the rise. You know, more people through pandemic, through isolation. We looked at the amount of money that was spent by the NHS in South Tyneside per head of population on mental health, and the figure was frightening. Why do we not have this place bulging at the seams when you look at the population of South Tyneside, or even take the ward that's here? Why is it not buzzing? Why is it not like queues out the door?
Sometimes you just need a talk and a laugh.
Sometimes you need a talk and a laugh. And you know, laughter makes the world go round.
People just generally open up, you'll find. So it has worked for, like, I went through a divorce about 9 months ago, and I didn't talk to anyone, but when I was young, we talked to everyone about it.
Been a lot of screaming out lately, isn't it?
Aye.
And it's sad, isn't it, when you can have somewhere to come and have a conversation and instead of going through that by yourself.
So one of our mates actually tried to take his own life the other night, just because things were getting on top of him, and he's never spoken to no one. So, until he put it on Facebook, and then obviously everyone started messaging.
Instead of sitting there stewing and letting it build, and if you're by yourself like this, right, it builds, and it's like a pressure cooker, it builds and just might explode. Instead of having one mind, you've got 6 or 7 minds, and somebody might just know something.
It gives you that hope, like, you know, definitely.
How does your constituency work compare to, say, someone like Boris Johnson, who's just declared £2 million on his register of interests? I mean, how does that compare to you speaking to constituents inside a food bank?
Well, there's no comparison between the two, is there? And I don't know what Boris Johnson's constituents come to speak to him about, but I would hope that my constituents realise that as a working class woman, I've got a bit more idea about what's going on with them and the issues that they're facing. I can't imagine that Boris Johnson gets the same issues that I get in terms of people not being able to survive, feed their kids and access benefits or access whatever support they need. They're so far apart that people like Boris Johnson wouldn't have a clue. Haven't got a clue with what people are facing, particularly in communities like mine.